1944. A transport checked in by radio, then landed only in darkness. The war taught knights to be polite. On a moonless March evening in 1944, a transport designated Flight 571 rolled from a Blackout hangar at RAF Brackenfield. Its cockpit curtains clipped, its inspection lamps taped to slits. The crew moved with the quiet of men who trusted checklists more than luck. Captain Avery at the yoke, Navigator Pierce with his G receiver and grease pencil, Wireless Op McEwen nursing the T1154/R1155, two fitters minding cargo lashings, and a medical orderly bound for a hospital strip across the water. Crates stamped medical, and spares wore rope like bandoliers. A single red cross stenciled under matte paint pretended not to shine. At 2042, the engines found their classroom hum. A three-lamp flare path winked twice and hid again, as if embarrassed by its own kindness. The aircraft lifted by doctrine, not drama. Tires touched the idea of light and were gone. Climb Out turned on a compass card that had learned to distrust iron. Below, towns obeyed the order in council by being absent. No cottage lamps, no station clocks, only faint reprimands of light scolded back behind curtains. Pierce took his first G-read, plotted hyperbolic curves that crossed obediently northwest of North Foreland, and wrote a time that would later argue with itself. The wireless carried voices shaved thin by atmospherics. Sector control, coastal DF, a convoy's guard ship practicing brevity. McEwen keyed position reports with the good manners of a guest. The altimeter chose 7.5 and kept faith. The temperature promised rime by and by. Somewhere aft, a fuel cap wept one bright tear into the slipstream. The night kept it. In the ops room, a controller wrote the sentence that never frightens anyone until afterward. 571 Airborne, report North Foreland. Overland became oversea mark. Compass became intention. Flight 571 entered Blackout like a hand into a pocket. Deliberate, confident. Nothing jingling but engines preaching their one exact note. Weather dislikes plans written in pencil. 20 minutes over water, 571 met layered haze that lifted and set like a lung. Pierce worked the G-box for times and ranges. Green traces obliged, then wandered, then thickened to a nobody's sky blur. Ground stations offered QDMS in tidy figures, magnetic bearings back to comfort. Yet the needle quivered as if the earth itself were unsure where home had gone. McEwen copied numbers twice, then once again by superstition. The pencil greased the margin with anxiety he would not admit. Ice learned the wings first, then the pitot. Boots thumped their metronome, airspeed sulked and returned. Somewhere behind the bulkhead, a crate shifted its opinion and then remembered its lashing. Pierce marked wind drift and watched the pencil skate toward an extra inch of east he had not ordered. The engines kept their patient sermon. Their note deepened a fraction as if considering a question. Avery asked for a height band change. Control, professional as T, offered Angels 9, and added, like a cough, report beacon. The G-trace flickered back with a second fainter ghost, half a pulse ahead, as though another Flight 571 had checked the math and chosen to lead. Pierce wiped the perspex with his sleeve. The ghost maintained its polite distance. McEwen tapped out all well and received instead a string of dashes that refused to become letters, a long, thoughtful tone that belonged to nobody. The cockpit windows filmed with rhyme. A mitten smudged a clear oval and let one reluctant star in. When the haze loosened, they emerged above a sea that had dismissed moonlight and kept only a metallic sheen. Far below, a destroyer wrote a pale V that pointed at nothing useful. Pierce squared the plot, underlined "on track," and underlined it again because faith, properly applied, is a navigation aid too. Blackout has a sound for those who learn it. 35 minutes outbound, the RT carried homebound fighters' fatigue, a convoy's laconic weather, and beneath both a low, strict hum as if the ether were filing itself. Then, clean as chalk on the ops room perspex, came 571's call. North Foreland, 571 estimating. The word after estimating never arrived. The carrier stayed, steady as a level bubble. The voice did not. Control answered with the book's courtesy and none of its ease. 571, pass position. The carrier brightened. Silence behaved. McEwen keyed twice without words, then once with a dash that lengthened too long for Morse and not long enough for trouble. Pierce checked the drift recorder. Smoked paper showed neat dots where air met arithmetic. Then a brief moth zig. Avery held heading by the old Trinity, compass, attitude, engine note, and found all three honest, which sometimes is the deepest confusion. DF stations turned their loops. Bearings crossed obediently over a small place on the map that contained only water and weather. A destroyer signaled it heard engines where eyes saw only the idea of sky. A beam station, offended by ambiguity, scrubbed a searchlight through cloud and caught nothing but its own patience. In the cabin, the orderly inventoried Morphia wrote her name inside a paper bandage tin and thought of kettles waiting warm at a Blackout hospital. She felt the pitch change by an unkind hair and tightened her belt. McEwen sent intentions and received what every operator hates, a tone with intention but not content, like a line held by someone unwilling to speak. The controller wrote in the log the sentence admissions clerks and undertakers both understand. R/T carrier strong. Letters absent. Search began before anyone admitted the word. Coastal radar painted a return that lived and died with the sweep in a way ground clutter does not. The GCI hut transferred grease pencil to map. A pinnace left harbor with muffled lamps and a kettle arguing itself to boil. At 2141, a Y station posted an intercept. 571's call sign inside static. Then figures that might have been latitude if the sea had agreed to numbers. The Opaz room gathered its cats, lifeboats, a trawler with a doctor, night fighters bored into cloud. Signals multiplied like polite lies. A lighthouse keeper reported a shadow breaking thin cloud under the beam and then not. A home guard post on a cliff heard a long glide in darkness, as if a cart rolled by on velvet. The beam station, shamed by optimism, put its light away. On the tote board, a color hung undecided between tea and grief. The bow fighters found weather enough to justify training and no aircraft to justify aim. One crew followed a pale wake on black water that unraveled when the pilot turned to line it up. Another flew through air smelling faintly of hot iron and damp wool, the honest scent of a cabin that should have been near. Down below, a lifeboat coxswain watched ripples move as though pushed by breath, then flatten themselves as if embarrassed by invention. At 22:03, the RT crackled with a sentence from no throat. Cleared to land. Cleared to... The rest became the long thought again. Control set lamps to minimum. 3 timid points, Mercy's signature, and the field listened. Grass bowed in 2 long lanes as if to prop wash, and then recovered with the self-respect of grass. The duty pilot wrote the sentence he would never enjoy explaining. Landing noises heard, visual nil. The fighters orbited once more and conceded the night its privilege. Morning arrived without locating a reason. The search grid stenciled neat squares over water, unwilling to hold geometry. A minesweeper took aboard a patch of oil the size of a tennis court. It smelled like high octane and like nothing at all. Divers went over and came back swearing softly at clear water with an empty habit. On Shingle, 20 miles north, beachmen found an uncrimped ration tin, a drifted page from a logbook washed thin as onion skin, and a medical inventory sleeve still dry inside its oiled wrapper. The log page kept better than everything else. In Pierce's provable hand, the last inked line read, ETA beacon 2138, G unstable, DF inconsistent, maintain. Beneath, impressed but not inked, lay a second line legible only by evening window light. Blackout holds. The coxswain slid the scrap into oilskin as if it might bruise. Inland, the sector station developed a night camera plate that had been lazily pointed at the flare path for training. The print showed hooded lamps, 2 mechanics as ghosts, and, in the sky above the field, 4 short, pale smears evenly spaced, like punctuation that had briefly considered becoming an aircraft. The adjutant labeled it halation and filed it under exercises. On the far side of the county, a farmer wrote the paper that his cows lifted their heads to a wind, not the prevailing one. By noon, the grid had learned humility. Lifeboats returned weather, kindness, and nothing metal. The duty controller shaved, slept an hour, and woke with a certainty he could not enter in any book. That an aircraft had rolled to a stop, throttles closing together like a benediction. That someone had said, lights off then, and meant the field, and meant the world. That the order had been obeyed too well. He found a smear of blue-gray lubricant on his cuff, and could not account for it. Files acquire weight by refusing to answer. The folder for 571 thickened with courtesies and contradictions. DF plots agreeing until they didn't. Y station strips where call signs repeated themselves half a breath early. A lighthouse keeper's note beginning, I know what I did not see. Intelligence wrote a paragraph recommending meteorology. Meteorology recommended intelligence. The airfield padre wrote the only honest sentence and locked it in his drawer. We pray for those not missing, but mislaid. At night, mechanics swore dispersal still smelled faintly of hot glycol at certain hours. A rigger rested a palm on an empty chock and felt it cool as shade. The orderly room found a requisition for morphia signed in a hurried hand no clerk could match. In the mess, a ration chit bore Avrian pencil that smudged under the thumb, and then would not smudge again, as if graphite had chosen to keep posture. The adjutant, a tidy atheist, woke twice to the sound of tires searching for grass, followed by the contented sigh of throttles closing where nothing stood. Explanations did their duty. Ducting across the North Sea, partial G failure, frozen pitot, a drift too small to dread and too large to live with, fatigue, a cargo that moved its center of gravity by inches, a pilot who chose right and found right empty. Each entered, underlined, sent up. The folder received them and stayed heavier than they were. A stenographer who disliked ghosts nevertheless typed the word Blackout at a memo's head, then glanced around as if she had said it aloud. On the anniversary, a year later, the field kept a courtesy. 3 hooded lamps lit for 1 minute at 2042. Grass bowed in 2 long lanes, or perhaps a breeze chose that minute for rehearsal. The log, without help, wrote a second paler line beneath the first, then faded while the controller fetched his ruler. What does not land must learn other habits. The field is a museum now. Perspex polished too bright, rods for visitors to push toy counters, a drowsy recording of ops room clatter. In a glass case, a log lies open to March 1944. The curator keeps it on the page where letters absent sits calm as a closed door. Children fog the case and a docent wipes ovals with a cloth kept for the purpose. On damp days, a second impression rises under the ink. Same words, a shade ahead, as if the page remembers being spoken twice. The coastal stations are cafes and condominiums with framed photographs of towers that once listened to weather. Occasionally, a resident, sleepless at 2, hears a low professional hum flatten into 3 polite bumps, the sound of tires deciding on grass, followed by the long, contented note of throttles closing. It is almost certainly the boiler. It is almost certainly the sea. He returns to bed and dreams a flare path like 3 small stars. Air control farther inland paints odd lines some nights. Turns marching without flight plans, vanishing where an old field once persuaded land into runway. Controllers draw boxes, write training, pour more tea. A fisherman keeps an aluminum ration tin on his mantle, uncrimped, superstition against seas that sometimes return things better left uncounted. The hospital museum files the orderly's never-posted letter, its fold greasy from being imagined. Stand by the old perimeter track at dusk. The grass minds the wind. The brass hoods shine hopelessly clean. For a minute each march, a cool breath crosses the field, and hedges lean as if an aircraft chose to be courteous. No voices. Only a pencil faintly ticking in a glass case. The soft click of a dimmer no longer wired to anything. And the patient, methodical dark once called Blackout, still doing exactly what it was told.